let's talk about using one of our players' journals at the table. We're gonna go over setup and also how I use journals specifically to help give you some ideas on how you can use it. So I have a Druid's journal. We'll be looking at this. I'll also show some of the other journals off a little bit just so you can see the little differences. What you're going to need is obviously a player's notebook. You're going to need a pencil, and you're probably going to want a dry erase marker. Now you can also use a pen if you want, but I'm going to recommend something that's erasable, at least in the beginning. Now these are just the bare minimum of what you're going to want when you go into this. Additionally, you might want to consider getting a Frixion erasable pen because it comes with this little like rubber tip at the end that you can use to erase things, which is what I typically use. You might also want a highlighter. I don't use highlighters very much, but I could see where someone might want to use one. You might also want to not lose all the time. You might also want a sticky note or two, and you might want to consider a regular old hole punch, and you might want to consider getting a punch. I have a Lavender punch. I also have an arc punch. I have a whole video on different punches. I also have a video showing how you can use a hole punch instead of buying one of those. So I'll link that in the description. Another thing, you might want to purchase these tab stickers. They are pretty useful if you ask me. It's why I designed them. But obviously that is optional as well, but they don't come with your journal. Alright, for setup, you're going to want to write in all of your stats into the journal. Obviously, I use this. So I've already gone through and I've written them in with my Frixion pen so that if my HP were to change, I can just go ahead and erase and then write in the right number. In general, I find that you don't need to remember the actual stat, but you do need to know the modifier. So I always put the modifier in the bigger box so I can see it easier. I feel like everything else is pretty much self-explanatory. I get a bonus from a circlet, so I add that into here for my saving throws. Next, you're gonna want to add in your tab stickers. I add my tab sticker to the character page so I can very easily flip to the page. I added one for spells, so you want to go ahead and fill in all your spells here. So you can see on here, I don't have a specific space for slots, which is a definite design flaw, but what I do instead is I write it in up here by the level. And then I actually have additional transparency sheets, which you can also buy if you would like. But I had a journal before my Druid, so I just pulled these from the old journal. Whenever I use a spell, I just do a little tick mark. I know I've used one of 4. When I get all my spells back, I just erase and we're back. Or you can move a sheet from the other side, so you can just very easily take these out and then move it from the other page. The other thing you're going to want to do is fill out your spells. Now I have the Druid notebook, which contains all of the Druid spells in here. I know that there's an issue with this one. This is an older version. A classic one that I used to use, and you can see I went in and I've written in every spell, and then I also highlighted verbal, semantic, material. For Druid, I was like, oh god, that's so many. So that's why I created some spell packs like this for characters like the Cleric, Paladin, and Druid. So then you're going to go through and you're going to want to add in all your tabs. So I always put my tabs on the tab dividers, space them so that I have an easier time reading and flipping them. There are some extra tab stickers. I'll show my semi-empty sheet, but there are some blank tab stickers at the bottom. So I write the word last, as in last session, and put it on my session notes tab. I move that tab as I go. So this was my last session. I'll put it right after that. So I can easily flip to this page. The other thing I do is set up a key for myself. On a sticky note, I'll write a key for what everything is. So for instance, I have a dash for notes. I have a star for an item. Now I know I didn't follow that last time because I lost my sticky note. But as you can see here, we have a note and then we have a location, an NPC here. The other thing I like to do, again, with a blank one is to mark one-shots. So I use my notebook for everything. So if I go to a one-shot session and I want to take notes, I'm still going to use this. That is one of the one-shots here. And then here's some more notes from different one-shots. So then I know that these are separate, they're not a part of my regular campaign, and they're in here. Alternatively, you could use the dungeon tab if you wanted, or just add in a blank piece of paper and put the tab on it. I don't normally use the dungeon maps much in my campaigns. That's because my DMs tend to already have maps drawn or use a dry erase board to draw out the maps, because we actually used to use grid paper and write out the entire dungeon like that. And it was actually easier because you can't always fit every single room on a dry erase mat. So then we could at least see where rooms were and how they connected. I get a lot of questions about this. For the class-based journals, everybody has their own specialized ability, so a lot of them have a specialized tracker. So obviously this is a druid, so she has a wild shape tracker here, how many times I've used it this rest, so put a little tick mark here. That's how I know she's used it at least once. And then if I have HP, so speaking out of my butt here, but if I turn into a direwolf and I got 40 hit points, I would put that there. You could put that in the temporary HP, so your HP is all together. You might want to track your ammo. I don't do that because I don't shoot, but you could use this box in a similar manner. Every time you shoot an arrow, add a tick, and then at the end, tally all these up, and then remove this and write it in. For anybody who has like a classic or an Art Deco, first off, the one that I'm about to show you is really old. It is more of a prototype than anything else at this point. But as you can see, I also had a druid here. Surprise! You can write on here, hit points here, your temporary hit points. You can do the same thing with ammo up here. The only thing is the classic version doesn't have any way to track your wild shape. Instead, I wrote wild shape on features and traits, and then I would literally just add a tick mark right over it. So that's one way of doing it on a classic and or the Art Deco version. I'll also just show you some of the other ones. So this is a monk journal. They have a place to track key points, so you could do a very similar thing. I'm not going to write in this because this one is for sale, but you can do a little tick mark. I would write in what my key save DC is and my total that are available, and then I would just use this box to make tick marks for everyone that I use. So obviously you can move any page around at all and stick it back in. Just pull from the top and you'll be able to kind of pop it out. If you don't want it to come out, you should probably turn from the middle of the page because that prevents it from really coming out. The other cool thing about these disc bound notebooks is that you can literally add anything into them. To kind of show this as an example, I have a picture of my character, although she has pink hair, so pretend she has pink hair. We're going to go ahead and we're going to punch this and put it in. Now I have a video and I'll link it at the top of this screen where you can do this with a hole punch and a pair of scissors. It involves a lot of tracing and a little bit of effort. However, if you're only adding one sheet in, I would recommend just doing this. I think I got this for $1 at the dollar store. You don't have to spend a lot of money that way. If you're just doing 1 or 2 sheets, it's a perfectly reasonable option. That said, I don't have to deal with that because, again, I make these. I punch these pages by myself, so I have punches. Here's my big bad Avenger punch. So I'm going to punch it this way. Not that it should matter that much, but it's a habit of mine to punch them all the same direction. So I'm gonna go ahead and give it a little punch, and then literally can just smack it in here. There you go. So now I have a picture of my character, although I don't know that I want it in the middle of my character sheet. So I'm going to put it over here. I also don't know what this page is doing here. Reorganizing my notebook on camera. So yeah, now I have a picture of my character in here. You could literally do this with anything. So if you have a really cool item that the DM gave you and there's a stat block somewhere online, you could print it out, punch it in, and put that in here. I've also done half sheets. So I've taken like a piece of paper like this, ripped it out, punched it, and put it in here. I do that more for my DM journal than I do my player's journal. So let's go over writing notes. I tried to use a key. I forgot my key for this session, so my bad. During the session, I write out everything using my... I'll also add things into these boxes as necessary. So if we meet an important person, I will put them here. And then at the end of the session, I write like a 1 or 2 sentence thing about what happened that session, just so I remember when I'm looking back. I also write down any important things here. You can use this next session line to write when your next session is. I also have used this line to write in something I wanted to do the next section. I've also used this line to write in something I wanted to do the next session. Maybe my character wanted to buy potions, write that. Once I've done that, I will actually review my notes. And the big thing that I do is I look at my locations, I look at my people, and I archive them. If we flip back to the people tab, you can see I've written in some people in here, where I met them, what I think they do, any description, which I'm really bad at remembering to write down what the DM says. So once you get all your stuff written in for people, then you could go to the location tabs and do the same thing. That's how you use my player's notebooks. I'll have links to everything I mentioned in the description below. None of this really matters if you take really crappy notes. So take better notes by watching this video here.